Welcome to Whispers of the Night. As the day folds itself into dusk and the noise of the world grows faint, this is your moment to slow down. Here, in this quiet corner of the evening, your breath softens, your mind opens, and your body remembers how to rest. Tonight, we'll take a gentle journey through memory, through wonder, through the softly glowing corners of time. There's nothing you need to do now. Just settle in and let the story begin to drift through your thoughts like a whisper on the breeze. Close your eyes and feel the gentle hush of evening settle around your heart. Sleepy Stories, the lighthouse that waits for morning. The keeper's quiet hour. You arrive before dawn at a seaside cliff where waves roll in rhythm like a sleeping breath. A lantern flickers high above, and your thoughts rise like sea mist toward the light. You meet the lighthouse keeper, a figure carved from quiet routine and patient solitude. In his silence, your mind softens, lulled by the rhythm of watches and the scent of salt. You stand at the edge of the world, or at least it feels like the edge. The sea stretches out in a silvery hush, its vastness dissolving into mist and sky. The stars are still awake, scattered above you like softly flickering memories. Below them, the ocean breathes slowly, its tides brushing the shore with an ancient calm. Somewhere in the distance, a gull calls once, then falls silent. A narrow path winds up the rocky cliffside, leading to a tall stone tower, its lantern still lit. You walk slowly, each footstep cushioned by the damp moss beneath your boots. The lighthouse rises like a steady thought, weather-worn, gentle, and dependable. Its light, though fading in the presence of the coming dawn, still casts a soft beam across the waves, not blinding, not urgent, just enough to whisper, "You're not alone out there." At the door, a warm scent drifts out, oil, sea air, and something like bread. The keeper greets you, not with words, but with a nod, his face calm, like a shoreline smoothed by years of tide. He's dressed in a thick wool sweater, sleeves rolled, hands calloused from care. He pours 2 mugs of tea, sets them on a wooden table, and returns to his watch without a sound. You sit beside him, listening not for conversation, but for the language of silence. And in that silence, you begin to notice everything. The soft creak of the tower timbers, swaying just slightly in the sea breeze. The clock's faint tick, marking time not with pressure but with patience. The keeper tends to his routines, as if following an ancient rhythm. He checks the oil levels, adjusts a gear, jots a note in a logbook with careful looping script. You realize this place runs not on electricity alone, but on attention. Every motion here is mindful. Every task done with the kind of quiet that carries weight. Outside, the wind picks up, but it doesn't feel cold. It feels cleansing, like a deep exhale. After a long-held breath, you press your fingers to the window pane and feel the warmth from the light within. Not hot, not dazzling, just warm enough to remind you of presence. The lighthouse, you learn, was built more than a century ago. Its stones came by boat, one by one, stacked carefully into place. No blueprints were needed, just trust in time, in weather, in hands that knew how to shape shelter. Every stone holds memory of storms weathered, ships saved, and nights just like this. You sip the tea, its heat blooming gently in your chest. It tastes faintly of herbs and salt, like something brewed not from leaves alone, but from place. The keeper finally speaks, his voice low and slow. He tells you he once tried to live in a city, but found himself always listening for waves. So he returned to where he could hear them clearly. You watch as he climbs the spiral stair to the lens chamber. You follow, your footsteps echoing softly behind his. At the top, the lens rotates with a grace that feels more like breath than machinery. This is a Fresnel lens, he explains, built from concentric circles of glass. It captures even the weakest flame and sends it far, a gentle genius of physics and design. He explains not with diagrams or jargon, but with metaphor. The light bends like water through a stream, he says, always finding the best way forward. You imagine that light flowing, bending, stretching out across sea and night. How a ship miles away sees only a blink, but in that blink finds home. Downstairs again. He writes in the logbook, sea calm, no ships tonight, but still, they don't shine for applause or attention. They shine because shining is what they were built to do. There's comfort in that. The idea that something can exist simply to guide, even in solitude. You close your eyes for a moment, and the tower creaks again, soft like a lullaby. You can almost feel time folding around you, as if the years here don't pass, they rest. Outside, the sky begins to pale at the edges. A ribbon of soft blue stretches across the horizon, peeling night gently away. The keeper stirs the fire in the stove, coaxing warmth back into the room. The waves below seem to hush themselves even further, respecting the fragile moment between darkness and day. In this hour, the world feels paused, like it's holding its breath before the morning arrives. And you too are still, not because you've stopped moving, but because there's nowhere else to be. This is what deep rest feels like, not absence, but presence without urgency. Not escape, but a return to something older than noise. The keeper hands you a blanket, gestures toward the chair by the window. You wrap yourself in it, the fabric thick and worn, carrying a scent of driftwood and time. The light continues to spin above, slower now, less urgent. The sea stretches out once more, quiet as memory. And as the sky brightens just a little more, you wonder, how did ancient sailors find their way before these towers were built? What did they follow when there was no beam to guide them home? Perhaps they watched the stars, just as mariners always have, waiting for the night sky to speak. Towers of time and tide. You drift backward in time to ancient pharaohs. The first great lighthouse of Alexandria. Stone blocks rise like puzzle pieces into the sky, guiding ships from across the known world. Your imagination sails along Roman coasts and Greek myths, where light meant life. Let the history of lighthouses stack like calming waves, each era a step toward now. The air feels thicker here, heavy with salt and memory. You stand not on modern sand, but on ancient rock, your feet planted at the edge of time. The sea murmurs around you, the waves speaking in a language older than any nation, any name. Wind brushes your cheek, carrying the scent of distant spices and burning oil. It is dawn in Alexandria, and the Pharos rises. You close your eyes and listen. It begins not with stone, but with need mariners watching the horizon, praying for something constant amid the shifting blue. Long before radar, before satellites, or steel hulls, there was light, and before that, fire. A beacon set high, kept alive through wind and storm, not to dazzle, but to guide. A pulse in the darkness. The Pharos of Alexandria rises slowly before you, not in real time, but in imagined rhythm. Block by block, ancient hands lift quarried limestone, their fingers dusted with history. Built in the 3rd century BCE, it stands over 100 meters tall, one of the 7 wonders, though it needs no pedestal. Its marvel is not just its height, but its purpose, a watchtower of hope, of signal, of science. You trace the spiral ramp in your mind, the one horses once climbed, bearing bundles of wood to feed the fire at the summit. Night after night, the flames would glow against copper mirrors, amplified and cast across the water. Some say these mirrors could focus sunlight like a lens during the day, a theory half lost to time and myth. But even if no beam ever scorched the sails of enemy ships, the idea alone warms the imagination. Science always begins as wonder. Waves crash below as you step inward. Now you are inside the Pharos. You run your hand along the cool inner wall, where centuries of feet have worn patterns in the stone. The walls do not echo sharply, they hum, soft and low, like distant thunder behind thick clouds. It feels like walking inside a memory. In here, even silence has weight. Outside, the port bustles. Alexandria is a crossroads: Greek ambition, Egyptian earth, Roman hunger. Ships arrive, bearing papyrus scrolls, alabaster jars, wines, perfumes, and stories. Mariners lean from their decks to spot the Pharos' flame, not just to find safe harbor, but to know they are known. To be seen is to be saved far above. The fire never sleeps. At its peak, the lighthouse watches both sea and sky. During storms, lightning might kiss its edges, but the tower remains always lit, always alert. It is one of the first true structures built for light, not shelter, for knowledge, not conquest. Centuries pass in a breath. Now you drift gently along the Mediterranean coast, and the towers change. One by one, they emerge shorter, humbler, lighting the waters near the Roman Empire. These early towers, called Fari in Latin, echo the name Pharos, which itself becomes the root of lighthouse in many languages. Spain's Pharaoh, Italy's Pharaoh, France's Fair. A legacy built not just in stone, but in syllable. These lights, though modest, still burn with purpose. Some are simple fires on raised platforms. Others, bronze braziers atop timber towers. They dot the shoreline like stars, earthbound constellations made by human hands. Together, they form the world's first network of light. You imagine a sailor, salt-crusted and exhausted, spotting a faint orange flicker on the horizon. It's not just a glow, It's a promise of land, of rest, of return. The lighthouse becomes more than a building. It is now a symbol. In myth, it is Prometheus's fire, tamed for the good of humankind. In dream, it is a lone candle in the storm. In science, it becomes geometry and glass, oil and optics. In the 18th century, lenses begin to bend history. You drift forward again, your body light as air, your thoughts floating like kelp in the tide. In France, the Fresnel lens arrives, a marvel of physics and clarity. Thin concentric rings of glass magnify light without mass. Augustin Jean Fresnel, a man of fragile health but sharp vision, invents a way for lighthouses to shine farther, brighter, deeper into fog and night. It is, in essence, a glass spiral of guiding thought. You hover beside him as he sketches, the candlelight flickering in his laboratory. He does not know yet that his invention will change coastlines forever, that his rings of carved crystal will circle the globe. But he believes in clarity, and clarity is often the first form of care. With Fresnel's invention, light becomes a tool of mathematics, angled, aimed, calculated, from cliffside towers in Cornwall to icebound stations in Norway. The new lighthouses pulse like heartbeats across the world's arteries, each one built to match the rhythm of its shoresome flash every 3 seconds, some every 7, each with a signature, a fingerprint of light. Ships can now recognize where they are, not just by sight, but by time. You listen to these pulses like a lullaby. Three beats, silence. 1 beat, silence. 7 quick flashes, then dark. It is Morse code in moonlight, a language only light can speak, a science that whispers across waves. You walk along one final path. The sea is colder now. The stones are slick with rain. You find yourself at the foot of a modern lighthouse tall, steel, humming faintly. Its light is lead now, its watchkeepers replaced by automation. Yet still, it shines. The structure is newer, the fuel cleaner, the systems smarter, but the soul remains. A tower, a beam, a vigil. You place your hand on the metal frame and feel it hum. It is not the hum of ancient fire or creaking wood, but the gentle vibration of purpose continued. This lighthouse does not dream of myths or mariners. It simply watches, and sometimes that is enough. Around you, the sky begins to cloud. A slow, silver fog rises. Your breath slows with it. And as your body leans toward rest, one thought drifts with you. That we built these towers not to fight the sea, but to speak to it, to say softly, steadily. We are here. We are home. We are still watching. And in every blink of light, in every silent rotation of lens and mirror, the world remembers how far a single flame can travel when given space and patience to shine. You close your eyes. Behind your eyelids, light still turns low, rhythmic, calm. And as you follow their glow, your thoughts begin to slip beneath the surface, where time folds into signal, and signal becomes sound, and sound drifts into the secret language of the deep. A language we'll begin to explore when we descend into the ocean's quiet heart. The language of light. A soft rain begins as your thoughts turn to how light speaks across the dark sea. Each lighthouse flashes in its own rhythm, a silent, blinking heartbeat. Learn how mariners read these patterns like lullabies written in code, and feel the comfort of messages that travel far, yet always find their mark. The rain comes gently, not with thunder, not with haste, just a hush, like the sea's own breath softening against the shore. It taps lightly on the stones beneath your feet and gathers in silver threads on your skin. Somewhere out over the water, fog folds itself into the sky, and night prepares its slow descent. You stand near the lighthouse still, but now your attention shifts, not to the tower itself, but to what it says. Because light, you begin to realize, has a language, not loud, not complex, but steady, rhythmic, thoughtful. Out there in the dark, lighthouses do not shout, they do not sing or speak in syllables. They blink, one flash, then a pause, 3 flashes, then silence. 7 short pulses, like a breath caught and released. This is not random. This is meaning, structured like music. A code, not meant for the ear, but for the eye. It is the Morse code of the sea. And for those who understand, it tells you where you are and where you are going. You close your eyes, and the darkness around you begins to shimmer, not with light, but with memory. A timeline written in signal. It begins in the early 19th century, when mariners had charts, but no certainty. When the difference between a safe harbor and a deadly reef was just one blink in the distance, engineers began to assign identity to each lighthouse, a signature, a pattern, a pulse. Each structure was given a flash sequence. Some lighthouses showed a single white flash every 5 seconds. Others gave 2 bursts, then rested. Some rotated their beams, creating a rhythmic wink of light that drifted across the waves like a whispering star. The light itself didn't change, but its rhythm became a voice. A tired sailor, lost in fog, could count the seconds between flashes. 1, 2, 3, and a long pause. And no, this is the Point Judith light, or this is the Eddystone, or this is home. Each lighthouse became a kind of heartbeat stitched into the coast, not unlike constellations, only more precise and closer to the sea. You imagine the world from above, not a map, but a pulsing net of light, blinking out across the oceans, faint in the daylight, alive in the dark. And you, somewhere in the middle, floating and safe because the lights are watching. You walk slowly now, your shoes pressing softly into damp sand. You pass old coastlines in your mind, one by one. The Fastnet Rock off Ireland, the Cape Otway Light in Australia, the Tybee Island Beacon in Georgia. Each with its own rhythm, each with its own story, told in flashes no louder than a firefly's wing. The science of it comes later. The optics, the Fresnel lens, the exact arc of beam and shadow. But the feeling that came first, the feeling that someone is speaking to you, even from far away. That someone built a tower, lifted a flame, and gave it a rhythm, not to command, but to comfort in this quiet world of signals. Meaning is measured in pause and return. Flash, wait, flash, wait. Even silence becomes sacred here. You think of the way your own body speaks, the steady thump of your heart, the pulse at your wrist, the breath in and the longer breath out. Isn't that a kind of lighthouse too? A rhythm that tells you you're still here. A warm breeze rises off the water. The rain slows. You sit on a smooth rock and listen to the wet air sighing through tall grass. If light can speak, you wonder, can it remember? The answer comes not as fact, but as metaphor. A memory is a pattern, too. Not always clear, not always perfect, but familiar enough to feel safe inside. And like a lighthouse's code, the memory doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to return to flash again when you need it most. In the mid-20th century, technology evolved. Radar, GPS, satellite beacons in space. But lighthouses still blink, still signal, still stand, because their message is older than the machines. You are seen, you are near, you are safe. You run your fingers through the wet sand at your side, tracing nothing in particular, Then, in your imagination, a signal forms. Single light, far across the water. It blinks once. Then again, you blink back. It's silly, maybe, but not untrue. Communication doesn't always require words. Sometimes it's enough to send out a pulse and hope that someone answers. This is the language of light, not to instruct, but to accompany, not to dominate, but to offer a path. Even modern lighthouses, with their LED lenses and robotic controls, still carry that instinct. They do not tire, they do not sleep, they do not wonder who's watching. They simply continue. There's peace in that. Peace in knowing that not every message needs reply. Peace in understanding that presence itself can be a form of care. You rise again, your body warmed by stillness. The rain has stopped entirely now. The fog lifts just slightly, revealing the lighthouse tower behind you, tall and quiet, its lens turning slowly, casting light out into a sea you can no longer see, and yet you know it's there because the light continues, and because rhythm, like memory, never truly disappears. It just moves further out until you find it again. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you become the signal, breathing in, breathing out, not searching, just steady. And as your thoughts deepen into rest, you hear a different kind of pulse, a deeper frequency, not from the sky or the coast, but from below, beneath the water. A sound not seen, but felt. A song, not of light, but of depth. Something ancient and slow and vast. Something waiting to be heard. When we learn how to listen beneath the surface of the sea, Fresnel's sleeping prism. You step into a warm room lined with glass, where a great lens glows with history. Discover how one man, Augustin Jean Fresnel, reshaped light into a gentle beam. The lens, a spiral of brilliance, bends science into a soft miracle of guidance. Let your thoughts swirl through prisms and oil lamps toward clarity and calm. You step inside a quiet museum by the sea. The air is warm, dry, scented with polished wood and time. Glass cases line the walls like sleeping thoughts, and at the center of the room, beneath a low golden light, waits a lens. It stands taller than you, round and fluted, spiral and still. Its glass is layered in perfect arcs, like the ridges of a seashell or the calm ripple rings of a single drop falling into memory. This is a Fresnel lens, and tonight it does not shine. It rests, its glass quiet, its geometry closed like a sleeping eye, but you can feel the light it once carried, not just through waves or photons, but through time. You walk slowly around it. Your steps make no sound. Each prism curves with impossible precision. You wonder, how did someone think of this? And so, like mist curling around a lighthouse, you begin to drift backward, not in space, but in thought, to another time, and to one gentle mind that changed how light could move. His name was Augustin Jean Fresnel, a quiet child, a sick child, a child who didn't speak until he was 3. He was born in 1788 in a small French town where the world still moved by fire and sail, where science whispered more than it shouted, and where light, for all its beauty, remained poorly understood as he grew. Augustin's curiosity turned not toward noise, but to clarity, to the subtle structure beneath the world. He became an engineer, but more importantly, he became someone who asked soft questions and listened carefully for what light might say in return. In his time, lighthouses still used crude oil lamps, burning behind thick glass that scattered more light than it shaped. Sailors often couldn't see the beam until it was too late, too near the rocks, too far from home. Fresnel saw not just the light, but what it could become. He imagined a lens that didn't resist light with bulk and curve, but guided it through elegant steps. A lens that spoke to light in the language of angles, thin, layered, and precise. He shaved away the heavy glass of traditional lenses, cutting it into concentric rings, each one focused, refined, like taking a mountain of crystal and flattening it into a spiral of thought. The result was astonishing. This new lens could bend light across impossible distances with only a fraction of the weight. It focused brightness like a whisper concentrates, intention, quiet but powerful. The beam could now stretch far out to sea, even in thick fog or moonless dark. And for the first time, a lighthouse didn't just glow. It reached. You look again at the lens before you. Now you can see the miracle in its shape, the steps in the glass, the soft intelligence of each ring, a spiral designed not to dazzle, but to direct. The light it carried wasn't louder, it was smarter, and with that, the oceans changed. One by one, lighthouses across the world adopted the Fresnel lens. Some were small, for harbor lights and river mouths. Others were giants, rotating beacons that cast radiant messages miles across the open sea. Each lens was hand-built, its rings ground with precision, assembled like delicate music, and when placed atop a lighthouse tower, it became not just a tool, but a soul. Sailors gave these lenses nicknames: the glass giants, prisms that never slept. You sit on a bench now, near the lens, and in your mind, the glass glows again, not with heat, but with memory. You imagine oil lamps flickering behind the lens in the 1800s, their flame made focused, clean. The keeper, winding the rotation mechanism by hand, listening to gears click, like the ticking of an old clock, the beam sliding out to sea, a silent arm sweeping over waves, over fog, over distance, and a sailor, just one, standing at the helm of a wooden ship, wet hands on the wheel, searching the night for something familiar. Then, a flash, a beam, a rhythm. The sailor breathes easier, not because they're home, but because they're known. This is the legacy of Frunel, not just a design, not just a lens, but a way of thinking, a way of shaping light with care and gentleness, a science born not of conquest, but of guidance. You lean back. The rain from outside has stopped, but you still hear its echo. Or perhaps it's just the hush of the room, settling like dust in the stillness of understanding. The more you study the lens, the less you notice the glass itself. What remains is only the movement it enabled, the path it cleared. That's what a prism does. It doesn't create light, it directs it. It honors its journey, gives it form. Your thoughts swirl now, soft and slow, like rays inside a crystal, bending but not breaking, passing through, then out again, changed. You think of Fresnel in his final years, nearly blind from the same light he loved. He died young, at just 39, never knowing how far his lens would travel. But perhaps, like the lighthouse itself, he didn't need to see the distance, only to believe in the beam. His invention became a quiet revolution, a tool of clarity in a world of storm. And tonight, as you sit here, wrapped in the soft silence of sleeping prisms, you wonder how many lives were saved by light that was never seen directly, only felt, only trusted. The room darkens just slightly, not from shadow, but from rest. Somewhere, another beam rotates, another lens keeps watch, not loudly, not even noticeably, but persistently, lovingly, with purpose. You close your eyes now, and as you do, you imagine the light bending through you, to passing softly through your thoughts, cleansing, reshaping, leaving behind only stillness and glow. You begin to wonder what other miracles of light are hidden in plain sight. Perhaps not in towers, but in glass fibers, in satellites, in the pulses beneath your fingertips, in the way a single photon might carry a message across space faster than thought, without ever losing its way. You feel the idea forming now, not as a sentence, but as a rhythm, something deeper, something faster, a signal made not by flame or fog, but by time and entanglement, and you follow it, just as a ship follows light into the quantum sea that waits ahead. Storms on the edge of sleep. Winds howl like ancient voices outside the lantern tower's thick walls. You feel the shudder of storms past, waves crashing, ships floundering. but inside, the light holds steady, its pulse unwavering through the chaos. Find peace in the resilience of lighthouses that weather all things, even time. The wind begins as a whisper, a low breath along the rocks, then builds like a memory returning. You feel it in the floorboards beneath your feet, a tremble that moves through the soles of your slippers and into your bones. Outside, beyond the thick glass and weathered stone, the sea stirs with slow unrest. Waves curl like giant scrolls, unrolling their foamy script across the shoreline. The lighthouse groans gently, not in fear, but in remembrance. It has felt this before, many, many times. Storms at sea are different than storms on land. They do not come to startle, but to surround. They wrap you in sound, in salt, in sky. You watch as darkness thickens over the water, a deep slate veil drawn across the horizon. Lightning flickers somewhere far off, not in jagged fury, but like the pulse of a tired eye blinking open. Thunder rolls behind it, low and delayed, as if waking slowly from old sleep. You remain still, wrapped in a woolen shawl, the scent of oil and old wood around you. You sit near the lantern chambers, in a ledge, and listen, not just to the storm, but to what lives inside it, the rhythm of pressure, the patterns of change. For all its noise, the storm does not rage without reason. Warm air rising from the ocean's surface mixes with the cool weight of the atmosphere above, and in that contrast, movement is born, a breath, then another. The storm breathes to. It is strange how the heart slows in the presence of something vast. You are small here, yes, but you are not fragile. The walls around you have stood for over a century, weathering wind and water, rust and silence. Each stone is fitted with intention, layered like thought, patience pressed into structure. This lighthouse, like many before it, was built to endure, not by resisting the storm, but by learning its language. The lantern above continues its slow rotation, even in fog, even in the whip of salt and sand, its light carries. It pulses once, then again, a beat you begin to match with your own breath. You think of the mariners who watch for that glow, tiny in the swells, searching the dark. For them, that light is not just brightness, it is position, it is safety, it is memory on the move, a coded message blinking over the water. You are not lost. Each lighthouse has its own rhythm. Some flash every 10 seconds, some blink twice, then pause. These patterns are called characteristics, and they allow sailors to recognize which shore they approach. A language of pulses and patience. The storm does not interrupt this signal. If anything, it makes it more urgent, as if the lighthouse understands its task even more clearly when the sky is wild. You remember now how wind shapes more than trees. It shapes the heart. It tests the contours of who you are, gently at first, then with insistence. You've known inner storms too, the kind that arrive with no thunder, only a restless unease. Nights when sleep will not come, days when when thought spins too fast. But even then, like the lighthouse, some part of you holds steady below the lantern room. The keeper's quarters sigh in the wind, cabinets creak, windows rattle, yet everything remains in place. This space was built with storms in mind. Each shutter latched, each drawer lined, each floorboard braced. You feel a kind of comfort in that the design accounted for disruption, that safety isn't stillness, but resilience. Out at sea, the waves crash against the rocks in slow, endless rhythm. No two waves are ever the same, yet the motion continues, a kind of choreography between chaos and gravity. The wind stirs them, but gravity always brings them home. You feel the same pull in your own thoughts, spiraling and settling, stirred by memory, by dreams, by wondering, but always drawn back to body, to breath, to this quiet chamber where the light still turns. There is something sacred in the storm, not in its noise, but in its honesty. A storm does not pretend. It arrives, announces, and passes. It teaches the lesson of impermanence. No matter how long the wind screams, no matter how hard the rain hits, it will eventually quiet. And when it does, the world feels washed, not broken, but renewed. You press your hand to the thick glass of the lantern room. It is cold, but firm. Outside droplets strike and streak, pulled sideways by the gale. Inside, the light glows without interruption. You wonder how many nights this lighthouse has stood watch, how many storms it has seen, how many ships it has guided. It has no eyes, yet it sees. It has no mouth. You imagine the tower as a quiet sentinel, not just guarding lives, but whispering calm to the chaos. Somewhere deep within, you carry a lighthouse too, a quiet place that doesn't fear the waves, a center that still glows even when your thoughts flicker or your world bends. You think of that part of you now, not to fix anything, but to sit with it, to let it shine in its own rhythm, slow, silent, strong. As the storm reaches its height, you do not brace, you breathe. You feel the walls around you, not as barriers, but as shelter. The wind howls, but it cannot enter. The sea crashes, but it cannot climb. And through it all, the light continues, a rhythm in the dark, a promise in the night. You close your eyes and feel the sway of the tower beneath you, slight but sure, like a cradle built by time. You are not adrift. You are not alone. You are here in the eye of your own quiet resilience. The storm will pass, and when it does, you wonder, what does the world look like after the wind? The lighthouse that waits for morning. Return now to the original tower, where the keeper dozes beside the lamp. The wind has calmed, the sea softened, and light stretches far across the waves. You realize the lighthouse is not just for ships, but for minds, a promise in the night. just beyond the horizon, morning waits, gentle, glowing, and near. You return to the tower just before dawn, when the world is most hushed. The storm has passed. The wind, once full of stories, now rests against the cliffs. Its breath lingers only in the occasional hush of waves, folding softly against the rocks below. Everything feels slowed, as if the night is drawing its final, measured breath. Inside, the lighthouse keeper sleeps in a chair, one hand resting on an old logbook. His head tilts slightly forward, glasses low on his nose, and the lamp beside him casts an amber halo around the room. This is not the sleep of escape, but of return, deep and slow, like the tide itself. You walk quietly past, careful not to disturb the stillness, and climb again to the lantern room. The stairs creak, as they always do, a familiar rhythm. The glass chamber breathes with the early light. The great lens turns, not in urgency now, but in memory, a slow sweep over quiet waters. You stand in the middle of it all, the glass, the fog, the faint glow of stars, retreating into the morning sky. The light stretches across the sea, not to call ships away from danger now, but to meet the day. It's a different kind of signal, not one of warning, but of waiting, an invitation to return. Lighthouses are often thought of as guardians, built for the storm, but they are also keepers of calm. Their beams reach far, even when the sea is still, offering orientation when there is no immediate threat, no crisis. You think now that perhaps the most powerful thing about a lighthouse is not its defiance of danger, but its patient presence, even in peace. The sea beyond is softened, its surface drawn in smooth threads of silver. The waves move in slow rolls, steady and unbroken, as if exhaling sleep. You notice how light changes the water, not just in brightness, but in tone. Each ripple glows a little warmer now, brushed by a sun still below the edge of the world. This moment, this edge between night and morning, is a threshold. In this hush, your thoughts become softer, too. Ideas drift, not needing to arrive anywhere. You remember what it felt like to be uncertain, and how, even then, you found a kind of comfort in this tower. You were not answered here, not directly, but you were witnessed, lit from afar. The rotation of the lantern continues, deliberate, unrushed. You match its rhythm with your breath, a beam and a pause, a glow and the dark again. This pulsing has become familiar, like the way your thoughts appear and dissolve during sleep. Each flicker, a reminder, you are not fixed in place. You are in motion, even when still. Science, too, pulses between questions and revelations. It does not rush like this light. It waits patiently through fog, searching for clarity across time. It reaches out in all directions, sometimes unanswered, sometimes barely heard, but always present. And light itself, the very thing this tower has been casting, is a patient traveler. Photons, born in the heart of the sun, take thousands of years just to escape the solar interior, crossing space in minutes. By the time a beam reaches your eye, it is ancient and new all at once. You feel that now, how old light becomes present light, how what we see in this moment is built from immense distances and quiet arrivals, and how this lighthouse, though small on the edge of the world, participates in that same cosmic rhythm. It reflects, it refracts, it reveals. You remember how the Fresnel lens works, layered rings, each a slice of geometry, bend light into focus. A marvel not of brute force, but of subtle design. From brightness alone, but from shaping what already exists. You are reminded, clarity doesn't shout. It is coaxed gently from the fog. Below, the keeper stirs slightly, a breath, a shift, but still dreaming. His presence anchors the space, like gravity anchoring the moon's pull on the tides. You think of how long he's tended this place, not just the flame, but the silence, not just the machinery, but the meaning. The room smells faintly of salt, metal, and old wood. Dust motes dance in the golden spill of morning's first reach. Somewhere in the sea, a gull cries, not sharply, but like a drawn-out yawn of daybreak. Everything is soft, everything is opening, the sea, the sky, the self, all waking without hurry. You step closer to the window. Warm, the edge of the ocean, once a deep blue veil, now blushes with hints of rose and gold. Sunlight does not leap, it seeps, a slow glow that blooms outward, petal by petal, across the waves. You feel something bloom within you, too, a loosening, not a solution, but a shift. Like a door you didn't know was locked quietly swinging open. You lean gently on the brass rail, feeling its chill warm beneath your touch. The glass of the lantern room catches the changing sky in every direction. East catching fire, west still dreaming. This, you realize, is what the lighthouse truly offers. Not just direction, but presence. Not just safety, but stillness. Place where questions are allowed to rest. And perhaps that is why the lighthouse waits. Not just for ships, but for minds like yours to return, to watch the light and wait for morning to rise. Somewhere beyond the line of sight, the sun is almost here. You can feel it, not in heat, but in quiet, in the way the air changes, full of anticipation, not urgency. The light does not chase the dark, it simply replaces it, one soft breath at a time. Behind you, the keeper sighs in sleep. You stay a little longer, bathed in the hush of what is becoming. The lighthouse turns, the world turns. You turn inward, not to escape, but to receive. There are still mysteries waiting out there, beyond the waves, beyond the stars, beyond knowing. And as the first edge of sunlight touches the sea, you wonder quietly, how does light remember where to go?